How are you feeling as we're a couple hours away from tip-off in this one?
If I told you guys I wasn't fidgety and nervous, that would be really odd. But it's our journey has been so different, and I've been with Tom a long time now, and so we've sort of been through the ups and downs of a 30-year career. But the thing that's so different about this year is that, just go look at the first team All Big Ten or the second team All Big Ten. You won't see one Michigan State name on that line on either one of those teams. Yet we won the Big Ten regular season by 3 full games. In the middle of August, people were saying, well, it is so they'll probably make the tournament, but maybe they finish 6th, 8th in the Big Ten regular season. And so, and all those doubters, it was justified because Tom only had one proven scorer back. He had a point guard coming back that was trying to find his way back after a terrible shooting incident the year before, unproven. He went to the portal, but he didn't come away with big names. He got a couple of utility players in our world from mid-majors. The post play, you're like, who's going to play in the post, and can anybody score? I mean, these are legitimate questions based on what we saw the year before. We had one good freshman coming in. He was going to play, Jace Richardson, but nobody knew how good he was going to be. We have this guy that can jump like out of any dome you can imagine, Cohen Carr, but he can't shoot. And then that was the team, and off we go. What happened to this team was pretty simple. All of a sudden, all those question marks went away, and they became one of the best teams Tom has ever had. Maybe not most talented, but in terms of his teams, unbelievable. And when we beat North Carolina in overtime at Maui, if you can imagine this, guys, especially with the schedule Izzo always puts together and the Big Ten, we didn't lose a game in December or January. We whipped off 13 straight, and everybody's going, what just happened? But what happened was we're finding out that if you can play 10 guys and everybody has one focus and they listen to Izzo, which these guys do, you got a chance to win a game.
Well, that's exactly where I was going to start you with, where this isn't Tom Izzo's most talented team, but they're a win away from getting back to the Final Four. And you mentioned with how deep this team is, why do these pieces fit so well? And it's not conventional how they're doing it in today's college basketball. They're one of the poorer three-point shooting teams in the country, but they're able to make it work.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on a show, something like this, and somebody asked me what the weakness of the team was. Even though we're winning games, I said, well, we can't shoot. But yeah, we're averaging 80 points a game. You're like, how does this work? But it's we've all seen practices where it gets a little rowdy, coach gets a little irritated, tempers flare, voices get loud. Well, this particular season with this team, if you go to a Michigan State practice this year, you get to see Tom Izzo teaching, not yelling, but teaching. And he's got a good group of students, and they soak it all up. And it's pretty interesting. They came in with one purpose, and that was to win basketball games. And they really – it's so trite to say this, but there isn't a guy on this team that cares who leads what. They just want to win a game. And they've just kind of bonded together. I haven't seen anything like this in years.
You know, Will, I'm glad you mentioned the practice dynamic and the amount of teaching and maybe not raising voices as much, because it does feel like every year that people are critical of Izzo for the way that he coaches and how hard he coaches, yet all of his players love him and have his back. Can you speak a little bit more to that dynamic and the way that maybe some of the stuff that we don't on the outside see on how he takes care and communicates with his players behind closed doors?
I talked to a veteran coach who's really good friends with Tom, and he told me in all of his years he had never seen any coach at any level spend as much time with his players off the court as Tom does. And obviously coach is hard, but away from the X's and O's and the games, he spends a lot of time with them about their goals, their future. What do they want to accomplish? He's just, there's a human side of all this that Tom, by design, does not let get revealed very often. But he spends so much time with these people trying to help them. And even when he has a player, leave the program for whatever reason, he still keeps in touch. He still tries to help them. We've had a couple of players who were, I would call, recruiting mistakes. They just weren't good enough at this level, but they were good guys, and Tom hooked them up with better programs. I mean, he's an amazing individual. And some of the proof of that is he has a reunion every year. And hundreds, 300-400 people come back every year for a game from all over the country. And they do that because of him. And so is it easy to criticize somebody when they might get a little irritated because maybe a player said something to him they shouldn't have? It's very easy to do that. But if you're around this man and watch how he operates and the things he does in the community, which he does not get fanfare for by design, it's amazing what he does. And I don't want you to think that Tom's Mother Teresa, he's not. But he is one of the most amazing people I've ever met.
Well, let's get into tonight's game against Auburn. And if you go back to the game against Ole Miss, very uncharacteristic of Michigan State losing the rebounding battle to Ole Miss, who's not a great rebounding team. And this Auburn team tonight outside the top 50 in rebounds per game. Are you expecting a bounce back in that area?
I love all this stuff because, you should have seen our scouting report. One of the real pluses is going to be how we're going to out-rebound Ole Miss. Oops. And that just goes to show you what happens when a lot of, people decide they're going to get something done. But, it's interesting. I don't have any idea how any of this is going to play out today. I looked real hard again last night at the Michigan game with Auburn because we know Michigan pretty well. And both teams played so awful in their first half, you can't take anything away from that. But I do know that I think it's so important because MSU is going to get their fair share of boards and putbacks, and so will Auburn. But playing smart is so big. Michigan got beat because they didn't play smart. MSU can play smart, and if they do, they can hang. But Auburn's so darn good. You just can't be careless with the basketball. You just gotta play sound basketball. How easy does that sound? Just don't throw the ball away. Hey, throw it to the guy on your team. How's that? Don't try some stupid alley-oop pass. Protect it. All these little bitty things, and the team that does that today is going to win this thing.
How important, you mentioned those fundamentals, right? Not turning the basketball over. We saw yesterday in that matchup with Texas Tech and Florida where Texas Tech is missing the front end of 1-and-1s that ultimately led to a big run from Florida. How important is it going to be to when you are able to get to the charity stripe that you're able to convert if you're Michigan State, like they did against Ole Miss?
I think it's critical. There was one point this season when MSU was so good from the free throw line, it was going to be percentage-wise the best free throw shooting team in the history of Michigan State basketball. Then they went through a little tough stretch, but they're still number 2 all time right now. And they're starting to shoot it better. But making these free throws in a tight game like this, it really is, it's of the utmost importance. And that might be the X factor in this whole game. And here's a great story about free throw shooting. I mentioned Cohen Carr, the guy that could jump through the roof, but he couldn't make a jump shot because he didn't have one. Well, and he didn't have a free throw that would go in either. And somewhere after a handful of games this season, Izzo took him aside and said, Cohen, we got to work on your form because you're missing everything because of your form. And Tom made a couple adjustments with him, and he worked really hard at it. And in the last part of the season, he's about 87% from the stripe. He's making threes. He's got a mid-range game. And we have backup post players who normally They're 55% free throw shooters. They're shooting 80%. So this team is just dialed into all the little things. But to see a guy like Cohencarn step up there and just make free throw after free throw after free throw, you do believe in miracles. Miracles can happen.
Well, I know that you can say this for every single game, regardless of sport. Getting off to a fast start would be big, but especially in this game, because we've seen Michigan State and Auburn in their tournament runs get off to these slow starts. Has there been a commonality for Michigan State in those slow starts?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how Auburn gets off to their slow starts. I can only guess it's sloppy ball handling. But in our case, it's just very strange. It's just like we seem a little stiff, or we're a little, robotic as opposed to just playing. And then all of a sudden we start to settle in. And it's amazing how fast MSU's been able to make up ground, because we've been trailing at halftime a lot of games this year, and in the second half just own people. And some of that is we haven't had injured players. I hope I didn't jinx that. And then the other thing is playing 9-10 guys every game. You better be in good shape to keep up with MSU because of the way they play. I mean, this game is going to be up and down the court.
Are you expecting Michigan State to get out there and really run it? I know they're so great in transition offense.
That's our game. Tom always talks about, defend, rebound, and run. That's it. That's what we do. And some days it works better than other days, obviously. But this season, Michigan State's lost 5 times this year. But only one game did it really get beat. We played Memphis and Maui, and Memphis had a great day and just beat us. But these other games they've all gone to the wire. They've been close. And at the end of the whole thing, if we could somehow get started, and I know Auburn's saying the same thing, if we could just get going quick. But how much have we seen in basketball this year where, did you really think with 4 minutes to go in the game or 5 that Florida was going to be in the Final Four?
No.
I mean, this is a crazy game this year.
And to that point, Will, just ending you with this, how do you see tonight going? Do you expect it to be one of those final possession type games?
Could be, but, the key for both ball clubs, I mean, Michigan hit a dry spell. That's why they got beat. That is not going to be allowable in this game. And the intangible here is how are they going to call the game? Are the officials going to let these big guys pound it and beat on each other, or are they going to call a bunch of ticky-tack fouls? Are the wrong guys going to be in foul trouble at the wrong time? I mean, I think it's these sort of things that are going to decide that. Do I think it's going to be close? I really do. But it's not going to be like Joe Smith made 8 threes. It's going to be these other things that probably are going to tell you who's going to win and move on.
It should be a fun one, Will. I can't wait. Have a great call this afternoon. We're looking forward to it. And if you guys go 1-0, you get to do the same thing next week.
I know, and if we win, it'll be a great call. That's how it works.
Yeah.